Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenny Charles, and I'm the current president of the WPC. Please welcome to our Lunch and Learn series today with Holly McCall and Chip Saltsman, moderated by Dr. Sherry Weiner. If you are an attorney and joining us for CLE credit, we plan to submit your name and bar number to the commission. So you have to do nothing there. We'll take care of everything. And it is my pleasure now to introduce Sherry Weiner. Sherry Weiner is a doctor of audiology, and she shares that helping the hearing impaired got in her blood in high school. Now, 48 years later, she continues to pursue her passion by helping practice owners bring their compassion to others. She is active in the Bellevue community for over 20 years, and Sherry has served as president of the Bellevue Chamber and Exchange Club. She is on multiple Metro Nashville boards and commissions and was honored to be named Bellevue Citizen of the Year in 2007. Sherry was elected on 2 terms of the Metro Nashville Council, and during which time she was elected by her council colleagues to serve as president pro tem and served as acting vice mayor. And since the expiration of her 2 terms of the Metro Council, Sherry has been appointed to the Metro Council Civility, the Code of Conduct Committee, the COVID Small Business Task Force, and on the Mayor's Council of Women. She currently is the chair of the Fair Board. So Sherry joins us today and will be moderating. So Sherry, I'm going to pass the torch to you.
Thank you so much. This is going to be a lot easier being chair of the Fair Board right now. I want to what's a little bit about yourselves. Okay, Holly, I'm going to let you go first.
I will go first. First of all, Sherry, it is very nice to see you. Jenny, it is nice to see you. And Chip Saltsman, it's always good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. So my name is Holly McCall, and I'm a native of Franklin, Tennessee. I've been kicking it in politics and journalism for 35 years now. And my current role is that I serve as editor-in-chief of the Tennessee Lookout. We are a nonpartisan and nonprofit digital news outlet. We've got 3 full-time reporters, a wonderful contract photographer, and we work with a number of excellent freelance writers. And our primary goal is to cover what's going on in state government and state policy, because it's grossly undercovered. Newspapers and news outlets have cut back their Capitol Hill reporting staff. So that's our focus, although we will get into other areas from time to time. And I'm just really always happy to be here with the Women's Political Caucus.
Thank you so much, Chip. It's all yours, honey.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, after Sherry, your introduction, I think we should just sit back and let you talk. That's a pretty introduction and resume, and I think I can learn a lot from you, especially all the great things you've done in Bellevue. I joined too. I'm really looking forward to being with Holly. I'm in the car for a few more minutes, so I apologize to those that are on a Zoom call. And also for my lawyer friends from across the state who emailed me about my headshot being a little old, I will be getting that updated. I think a lot of them said that was my high school photo. I have got a little bit more gray hair since then. But I am originally from Nashville, political consultant. One of my jobs is to try to stay out of Holly's publication on a regular basis. If I do that, I feel like it's a win. I'm involved in a lot of national campaigns. Worked for Vice President Mike Pence, Sarah Huckabee Sanders for governor in Arkansas, Congressman Kustoff in West Tennessee, Speaker of the House here, Cameron Sexton, worked for the House Republican Caucus, to name a few. We're involved in probably 3 or 4 governor races this cycle, and really looking forward to mixing it up. And look, Holly's one of the best. If you see a white towel come on the video screen, just move on to the next question, because I'm going to give up and let Holly win that one and move on.
Spoken like a true politician.
That's great. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started, because I have quite a few, and we'll just go as long as we can. Strong and divergent and divisive opinions are fueling a movement to limit our human rights. what women do with their bodies, the right to love who you love, the willingness to give a child a loving home, regardless of your religious affiliation. And that divide is getting wider, and it's consistent with the ongoing rhetoric and the rancor that we see. How do you approach the impact on people's lives from your perspective?
Well, I'll go
Who do you want to
first.
start with? Holly, go first. I like it.
So, I have pretty strong opinions on these things, which I usually publish a weekly column, and that's where I let my personal opinions out. But we also recognize that for instance, the readers of the Tennessee Lookout aren't necessarily Democrats. They're not all Democrats. They're not all Republicans. We actually have a pretty broad readership. And so we try to be fair about it. We try to address, I know people talk about both sides-ism, but it is important to recognize that somebody like me, I do believe in a woman's right to choose. I believe in that very strongly, but I also know that we have readers who, for religious reasons, do not believe that way. And I respect them. I don't agree with them, but I respect it. And so we try to have our news coverage be as fair as possible. One of our reporters, Anita Wadwani, many of you all might recognize her byline or her name. She's a veteran reporter, and she is professional as they come. She's got really good relationships with Tennessee Right to Life, which has been a backer and drafter of a lot of the anti-abortion legislation over the last 20 years or so. She has got a good enough relationship with them that they will talk candidly with her, but she's also got a very good relationship with Planned Parenthood. And I think it speaks to her professionalism. And, I don't consider that both sides-ism to be able to write and publish opinions from people who have pretty strong grounded opinions on both sides.
Thank you so much. Chip, your turn.
Yeah, so I deal, and that was a heck of a question to start off. I was hoping something like, "Hey, what do you think the Titans look like on Sunday against the Raiders?" But we just jumped into it. So from a political consultant point of view, you packed a whole lot into one question because there's so many issues that are very emotional. They're very personal. And when we make those decisions, not only in a campaign setting, but also in a legislative setting, those have great impact on lots of people. I'll kind of focus my answer on the pro-life, pro-choice question as we go that, because that's probably the hottest topic that we go through. And I thought I wanted to lean a little bit on what Holly said, in the sense of, I thought the best thing she said is she was talking about having people in her readership that are pro-life, and they talk to the people in Planned Parenthood. I think whenever you have these deep personal issues that have deep divides, and let's be honest, the pro-life, pro-choice question, there's deep divides on both sides. Having as many people in the conversation to figure out the best way to I don't know if you ever get that question right, but to try to make it as easy as possible for something that's so personal. So I'll just make it I'm going to make it very clear cut, since I'm the political guy in the room. The life question cuts about 20% of Tennesseans think there should be no abortions no matter what. There's about 20% of people that think there should be no limits on abortion no matter what. And about 60% in the middle think abortion should be rare with exceptions. And that's life, rape, and incest. Life of the mother, rape, and incest. And as you're running a campaign on those, for the last 20 years, the Republican Party would say we're pro-life, and the Democrat Party would say we're pro-choice. And a lot of people would say, I'm not really sure what that means exactly, except one says that I'm for the woman's right to choose, and the other one says I'm for the baby. And for the most part, it was settled law, and nobody really thought much about what that meant. Now, with the Dobbs decision, everybody's kind of rethinking and recalibrating what that actually means to their states. So we live in a state that is a little more red than others, and we are a much more pro-life state than, say, California or New York. And as we kind of move this into legislation in January, you're going to see 100 bills probably start off at the beginning of the legislative session. And what my hope is that I'm a pro-life Catholic. So for me, it's a lot more than a political decision for me. I would probably tell you I got involved in politics because of the pro-life issue. I've marched in pro-life parades. I have been involved in prayer groups on that issue. But I also know that where the vast majority of the people in this country and the Tennesseans is abortions should be limited, and also it should be about protecting the life of the mother, rape and incest.
So I'm just going to jump in. I know this is not a debate, but I would love to see some backup for the 60% that say it only be in rare cases. That sounds very high to me.
So the 60% is broken into all the different exceptions. If you just say exceptions for rape for life of the mother, that's about 30%. If you throw in rape and incest, that's another 18 or 20%. If you throw in when you hear a heartbeat, that's another 8%. So it's all totaled. In Holly, in Nashville, it's not 20/20/60. In East Tennessee or West Tennessee, it's not 20/20/60. That is a very generic number for the whole state, because as you know, if you polled that in Metro Nashville, it would be a completely different number than if you polled it in Dixon County.
I'm mulling all of this over.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I'm happy, not on the call, but afterwards, if you want to, I'll call you and I'll walk through some numbers with you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Facts always make a difference. So
You know,
let's
I'll be honest, in our profession, facts are not always important.
It's emotion.
Now in Holly's
well,
business,
yeah, in your profession.
in Holly's business, facts are a little bit more important. So
Well,
Yeah.
that's okay. And Chip, we do rely on facts, but it does matter. But for instance, to verge off just for a second, recently we've been covering the issue with the Vanderbilt Transgender Care Clinic.
Yeah.
We're covering it from the standpoint of all these state lawmakers, senators are outraged. They're talking about bills. And I think our stories have been completely fair and down the middle. But we've got emails from people who say, I'm so opposed to this. I can't believe this is going on, but thank you for doing a fair job. And then we've got emails from people saying, how can you be so biased? So I always figure, if y'all will excuse one slightly off color word, if you're pissing everybody on both sides off, you're probably doing the right thing.
I would agree with
that. As a journalist.
Yeah. You want people on both sides to be slightly mad at you.
Yep.
There's a lot of truth to that, no matter where you sit, actually. So let's do something fun. Let's talk election contests. Where do you see the hottest races, say State House or the congressional seats across the state? What do you look at?
Chip, you go first.
Yeah, I'll go first. Since we're kind of in a day, we'll rotate the first answer. So obviously we've got an open congressional seat right here in Middle Tennessee with Heidi and Andy Ogles. It's definitely a lean Republican seat, and Andy Ogles should be elected the first Republican congressman from that district. It will be obviously in southern part of Davidson County. It'll be a little bit more of a challenge for him, but the rest of the district looks really good. So, I mean, obviously that's going to be a seat that everybody's going to be watching because it's a quote pickup seat. And that a lot of the national reporters will write about that Tennessee picked up another congressional seat and went from 7-2 to 8-1. So that'll be more of a national story. On the state level, Davidson County's also got a hot state house seat with Michelle Foreman. You move up to Clarksville. I'm kind of focused on the Middle Tennessee. Tom Vallejos and Ronnie Glenn will be in that seat, and that'll be both sides will fight a lot for that. If you move to West Tennessee, we've got some John Gillespie as a seat in Shelby County. That is it's not a barn burner for any other side. It's almost a true toss up seat. And then you go to Knoxville and you've got Elaine Davis in one seat, and then David Posey running against Gloria Johnson, which is just always fun for me. I mean, Gloria Johnson is, I don't agree with her on anything, but I love running campaigns against her because it's just so much fun.
So I'm going to jump in. So in the House 5, that's the Heidi Campbell, Andy Ogles matchup. That was a district that was obviously redrawn to favor a Republican candidate. I think that Senator Campbell, she's got to thread the needle there. She's got to run a perfect campaign. I think I've seen that they've just put out some sort of limited edition anti-Dobbs or pro-choice campaign signs. There are a lot of women And I don't know that anybody's got hard numbers on this, but there are indications if you read everything from the Cook Political Report to Inside Elections to any of these publications that focus just on horse races, that women are pretty upset about the Dobbs race. And it's not just Democratic women. There are a lot of Republican women who are also upset. So I don't think we know how that's going to factor. I think it's a tough race for her. And I think the edge would be to Ogles because he is going to take all of that rural Tennessee vote, but she could thread the needle and pull it out. And then in Clarksville, Congressman Mark Green is running against Odessa Kelly of Nashville. And that's I don't think there's ever been a Democratic congressperson from the 7th district. Is that right, Chip?
Well, to put it this way, back in the 80s, it was Robin Beard from Middle Tennessee, and then Don Sundquist got elected that in the old 7th in 1982.
Right.
Robin Beard was a congressman before that in the 70s.
Right.
So maybe that was a Democrat at some point ago, but it's been since 74, I believe.
Yeah. So that's a pretty tough race, but Odessa Kelly is certainly making that a fun race to watch. Mark Green comes across, I think, in his videos sometimes as a bit of a dork. He recently did a post from down at the Mexico-US border with a pair of binoculars, which he referred to as binos, which that's a shorthand that a lot of people don't get. And Odessa Kelly just skewered him by standing outside his campaign headquarters with her pair of binos. So it's fun to watch. I think she will probably do better than the last few Democratic candidates because that district is the redrawing of the 5th district also cut parts of Nashville in that will be favorable to her. And then these House races, I got to tell you, I don't like McCall, and I'm sure Chip knows more about this than me. I think Caleb Hemmer is going to win his state House race against Michelle Foreman, I would think fairly comfortably. I know he's raised a lot of money. I see him out working hard. And then to me, I don't know much about the West Tennessee races. Who's running against Gillespie? Is that Ruby Powell Dennis?
Yes. No, Ruby Powell Dennis is running against Brent Taylor for the state Senate.
Okay. Who's running against Gillespie?
I should probably know that. And if I was at my office, I'd have my notes.
It's okay.
But it's still, John's doing well. And that is another one that in all the rest of the state, inflation and gas prices are the number one concern. In Shelby County, it's crime and law and order. Yeah. So it's a very different view of the world from Shelby County right now.
Yeah. And then Gloria Johnson's race, I will put out the caveat that Gloria is a personal friend of mine and has more cojones than any human being that I know. I feel like she's probably going to pull that off, but I don't. I wouldn't call that one right now, but she's been elected a few times now. She's built up a lot of support. She's probably drawing money from outside the district. I know Republicans always have a blast running against her. And I believe one time they compared her to Lane Kiffin or something. And yeah, anyway, but I think Gloria will pull it out.
I do have to stand up. I do have to stand up for my man, Mark Green. He may be a dork, but he's a really smart, well-financed, incredibly good guy, dork, and that dork is going to smoke that congressional race. So I had to stand up for my guy. I had to stand up for my guy.
Look, I have no doubt he's going to win because again, that's a really tough, beyond tough district to win. But I think Odessa Kelly is at least making it interesting for Democrats and is probably going to set herself up to run for whatever else she wants to run for in the future. Maybe it's mayor of Nashville. I haven't talked to Odessa. I don't know if that's on her plans, but I could see her running for mayor of Nashville and doing well.
And you brought up Michelle Foreman. The one thing I'd add to the Michelle Foreman race, why it's got one benefit right now is I'm for Michelle, and we'll be working really hard in my street in Westmead. They usually wait till I put up my yard sign, and then the rest of the neighborhood knows who to vote against. So I think I'm going to hold back, and I may throw the curveball. The Wyatt's yard sign out. They may all vote for Michelle. So we'll see what happens.
I was with Wyatt the other night and he was kind of down in the doldrums, and I looked at him and I said, be thankful, be very thankful. But he's a good guy. He's really a good guy. Let's have some fun again with the Metro Council. They dismantled any opportunity of either political party coming and offering a national convention here. And so many people thought that there was going to be blowback, but it's been pretty quiet. What are your takes on that?
So I'm going to jump in on this one, and I bet Chip's got a lot of good thoughts. But first of all, it is ludicrous to think that the Democratic National Committee would be interested in coming to Nashville. Look, I've been dealing with the DNC for 35 years. And, I've had some people, I think I went online and said that, or maybe even wrote about it. And somebody said, like, how dare you say that? And I'm like, I don't know everything, but there's no way the DNC is going to come to a state that is going to vote for a Republican presidential candidate. And I guarantee, like, the state, it's gone for Donald Trump more than 60% both times he's run. The second time he ran in 2020, he got a larger percentage of the vote in Tennessee than he did in 2016. So the DNC has got no interest in coming to a state where they're not going to be able to flip it. We are not a swing state. We're not going to be a swing state in the next foreseeable future. And you can call me a pessimist. I think I'm a realist. So the DNC is not interested in coming here. And I thought it was complete bull from everybody, Republicans, and there were Democrats who were saying, oh, we're going to try to get the DNC here. And I'm like, man, if you are a Democratic leader and you're thinking you're going to get the DNC here, like, what are you smoking? That's just not going to happen. So I do think there's going to be blowback. We have not seen it yet because the legislature has not come in session. And one of the rumors that's being floated widely is that the Republican supermajority legislator is going to want to cut the Metro Council down in size. And the number I keep hearing is 15. It could be a rumor. Maybe it's not, but I got to tell you, if that's something they want to do, like, I support that. Sherry, I know you were on Metro Council and I think the world of you, but I've worked in other cities, and Metro Nashville has got, I think it's the second or third largest council in the country. Like New York might be bigger, Los Angeles might be bigger. I got a lot of friends on council. I'm sure they won't like this, but it's, I think, really inefficient. And I have covered councils in other cities that were much smaller and much more inefficient, where they assigned an issue to each council person. One person was in charge of stormwater. One was in charge of garbage pickup. They spent more money on staff. They had full-time staff members. And so I say, hey, if you want to cut that council down, go right for it.
Okay, Chip, your turn.
Well, as a native Nashvilleian, I was absolutely blown away by the actions of the Metro. It was raw politics. It wasn't anything other than they didn't like Donald Trump, and they turned their back on $200 million for the city, which they desperately need, all because they don't like Donald Trump. And hey, I get it. They don't have to like Donald Trump, but I bet they like $200 million plus to the budget. And what I would tell people that don't like Donald Trump, he may or not be the nominee. Don't know, don't care. But I will care next year. Right now, I'm worried about the midterms. But having 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of hotel rooms being completely full in Nashville, having the entire world and the entire country focused on Nashville for a week, having every media outlet in the world being in Nashville for a week is really, really good for Nashville. And it shouldn't have been about politics. It shouldn't have been about Donald Trump, but that's what the Metro Council did. And I think that's a really short-sighted killing the golden goose, because I think there's a lot more people that come to Nashville that spend money at the honky tonks and going to the Grand Ole Opry and going to Titans games and eating hot dogs downtown and buying $500 hotel rooms that agree with Donald Trump than they do with the people on the Metro Council. So the Metro Council made a very large mistake, and there will be blowback. And I get that they don't like Donald Trump. That's fine, but they should care about their city, and having the Republican National Convention, having any national convention in Nashville or any of their cities is really a big, big deal for that city.
So I'm going to disagree with Chip a little bit, because cities typically they don't make all of this money from conventions. It looks like it on the face, but Charlotte had a tough time with it. Denver, I think, lost money on it when they had the Democratic National Convention. So it's not exactly a win-win. And also, during a brief period of my life, I did public relations for the National Convention Center. And let me tell you what, like, we're doing fine we are doing fine with tourism. Tourism is not an issue for the city. Booking hotel rooms is not an issue for the city. You know what? There might be some rationale to have the national convention here. I get that, but it's not because we need to keep hotel rooms filled, and it's not because we need conventions. We would be canceling 3 other conventions to host the Republican National Convention. So I'm going to take issue with him on that. I mean, it was completely a political decision. That is true. But, you know, given there's just so much discord around politics, you know, there's a lot, like we would draw people from other parts of the country and from other countries in here, but I don't think that would all be good, because we would also we'd be bringing a number of people who oppose the Republican Party and who are really, really angry about what happened to the Capitol on January 26, 2021. The security would be like beyond what I think we can imagine. I think we'd probably see some fighting in the streets. I'm not sure all the attention we bring to Nashville would be good.
Well, if that's the only disagreement we have, slight disagreement, I'm going to call it a win, Holly. But I still think at the end of the day, you're right. Maybe today that Nashville's got all the business they want, but whenever a business, whether it's a city or a company that you run or anybody that says, you know, we got enough business right now, we're okay, that's usually the beginning of the end. Because if they're starting to turn away business because they don't like Donald Trump, I don't think that's good. That's not a good decision for the city.
In other words, stay tuned.
Yes, ma'am.
I think so. And I will say, having served in that body in multiple roles and herding the cats in that room, it is large. It is most certainly large. And it's amazing that they get as much done as they get done. So let's keep having some fun about elections. We've got 4 amendments on the ballot in November. One addresses the right to work law. Another one addresses the Speaker of the Senate's role in the absence of the governor. And then you have the abolition of slavery. It's about time, although it's already there. And then the prohibition of ministers and priests from serving in the legislature will also be eliminated. Which ones give you heartburn and why?
Well, the first thing that gave me heartburn was on when we talked about slavery. I said, have we not already done that? I was like, that gave me heartburn that we have to go back and do that. Wasn't that a long time ago? We should have done this a long time ago. So the only thing that gave me heartburn was that one, and the fact that we're just, you know, why did it take so long? And the same thing with the pastors and the priest. I didn't realize that was a prohibition until this amendment came up. So, you know, sometimes I was like, okay. And so really and then the lieutenant governor, what happens in as it serves out the term of governor, like that was just an amendment cleanup that the government ops people said for having really good, clear cut transition of power for any reason was something that they needed more of in the Constitution. So, you know, that was a cleanup bill. Now, the yes on one, Tennessee being a right to work state, kind of codifying that in the Constitution, is a very important thing as we kind of move into it. It's something that's important that nobody's really heard about. Okay, Chip, why? As Nashville continuing to grow, as we've got Blue Oval City going on in West Tennessee, there's a lot more unions moving into Tennessee. There's going to be a lot more activity for unions. And it was, you know, that's just going to be, do we want to continue Tennessee as a right to work state?
Holly?
Sorry, I muted y'all because I have a dog whining in the background. I think amendments 2, 3, and 4 are basically pro forma. For instance, the prohibition against ministers, pastors serving, that hasn't, I mean, I think it does need to go away, but it's clearly not been enforced because we have several pastors who currently are serving in the legislature and have served in the past. Excuse me 1 second. Stop it. Obviously, I'm working at home today. The slavery thing, that seems like a no-brainer. The only one that gives me heartburn is Amendment 1, the right to work. So Tennessee has been a right to work state since the 1940s. And these pushbacks, well, actually, right to work was created as a pushback to unionizing movements in the early part of the century. And so right to work is a deceptive term. It doesn't mean you have the right to work. It is a way of managing unions. And the way the law is written currently, nobody can force you to participate in the union, to join a union. And at the least of this Amendment 1, like it's kind of a Californication of our Constitution. We keep adding amendments, and pretty soon we're going to look like California that's always amending their Constitution. But also, I don't think it doesn't do anything good for the state. It is more protective of businesses and less protective of working people. And, like my husband is one of the smartest people I know. He had 2 college scholarship offers, and he was tired of being from a poor family. So he joined a union right after high school. It's given him a great life. I am pro-union, and I think this is a completely unnecessary and probably harmful amendment.
Where do y'all see it going? What do you think happens?
I would guess, like, I hate to say it because we know how I feel about it. I would guess it passes. And part of that is because you've got a very strong coalition that is backing the right to work amendment. You've got former Governor Bill Haslam, you've got current Governor Bill Lee, you've got a really strong coalition of current elected Republican officials. They're going to have a lot of money to advertise. So my guess is that between that and the fact that I think many people are just not going to they don't understand what right to work actually means, and they're not going to understand the amendment.
Well, and amendment constitutions are usually very complicated, very kind of nuanced, and we run these quote campaigns, they say, but for most voters, they'll go into the ballot box and they might have heard about Amendment 1. Now, clearly, they can read all of them and make the decisions for themselves, and I think all of them are self-explanatory. But there's not any real campaigns. There's no energy behind voting yes or no on one. There's going to be hopefully a little energy on voting yes. But Holly and I agree on this. I mean, we think it's going to pass, and it's not because there was a very vocal, energetic debate about the issue. That's not why it's going to pass. It's going to pass because it's just most people haven't heard much about it. And at the end of the day, you say right to work, and they say, yeah, Tennessee's a right to work state, and we're not pro-union, and so we'll vote for that.
Gotcha. Well, let's continue the heartburn conversation. I have 2 words.
Those.
Hillsdale College. Who wants to go first?
I'll be happy to go with this. I am a proud pro school choice guy. I love charters. I love vouchers. I love anything that gives us an opportunity to redo our education system. But when the president of Hillsdale said that our teachers were from the dumbest parts of the college, my response was, he clearly is from the dumbest part of the charter school, because nobody can successfively educate our children. We can't start having that conversation without first starting with parents, children, and teachers. And I don't care if you go to the worst school in the state, and I don't know what school that is, but I bet if you went to the worst school in the state, you could pick out a lot of teachers that are amazing and that are doing amazing work in a tough environment with limited resources. And so every time I get in a conversation about education, and whether people are totally against charters or totally for charters, it doesn't matter. I always start out with the very bases. At the end of the day, everybody in this conversation wants to have the best outcome for the children. And the way we get there usually includes really good teachers and really involved parents. And for somebody to be from that part of the world that says, I think teachers come from the stupidest part of college, he set, I think, in my opinion, he set the school movement, choice movement back a decade. I don't know. I mean, I don't know him. I don't know that I'll run into him anytime soon, but he will probably not enjoy my conversation with him if we do. Is that blunt enough for you, Holly, where I come from on that?
That's blunt. That's blunt.
Blunt's often good. Doesn't leave room for question.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw a question in here that somebody has just posted. Anybody want to say anything about the potential national mayor's race that's coming up? I know it's going to change a little bit between now and then, but What you
I'll
got to say about it?
I will take this one. Although I have to say, I think vouchers are atrocious. I don't know why the state would be invested in giving away money that goes to public schools and sending that to families to send their kids to private schools, which, by the way, the amount of money they're giving away will not cover most schools. Anyway, having said that, the mayor's race. So I think the biggest news, certainly the last couple of weeks, is Hal Cato, who is I would say a revered nonprofit leader, decided he was not going to run for mayor. I actually think of the people who've been listed so far, he would have been the strongest challenger to Mayor John Cooper. He's worked in nonprofits for 35 years. He is like just very, very well liked, had the ability to do some self-funding as well as raise money. I'm not shocked that he didn't do it. But I do think that that's the news of the week. I think it's probably likely that John Cooper gets reelected. He has not formally announced, but I see no indications that he is not going to run. And, you know, cynical as it may be, it's pretty hard to beat an incumbent. And there's nobody who I know who is more competitive than John N.P. Cooper. And he also has got money he can put in himself. He will raise money. I think it's inside baseball that people aren't happy with him. But let's face it, most voters know the name Cooper. There are most city voters who are not thinking about the Nashville mayoral race. And he's going to be able to outspend, out-campaign, use the power of being an incumbent to get reelected. And there are a couple of other good candidates. I like Freddie O'Connell a lot. I think he's a great guy. I think he'd be a good mayor. I don't know that he's going to be able to produce enough juice to get the name recognition to be competitive. Matt Wiltshire, good guy, but I'm going to tell you, I don't see what Matt is bringing to the table that Nashville needs right now. So I think it's Cooper's to lose.
Well, even though I win about 90% of my races outside the city of Nashville, I'm like 0 forever in the Nashville's mayor's race. Nobody I've ever supported has ever won the Nashville mayor's race. So I'll let Holly take that one. And even though I'm an avid voter and supporter of who my city mayor should be, or from a metro mayor be, I don't think any of those guys want my endorsement in that race.
Probably a safe bet, you think? So let's talk revolving doors. We see a lot of revolving doors from time to time in the legislature regarding inappropriate behavior. How does that affect the credibility of our legislative bodies?
Chip, I'll let you start.
Yeah, a lot. And, obviously, I was very involved with Cameron Sexton as he became speaker a couple of years ago, with Glenn Cassida, who was speaker for about 4 months, and his former chief of staff. And I think it feels like in Tennessee, we forget the lessons we learn every 10 or 12 years. And somebody says, I'm smarter than the system. And they go out and have a little scheme and try to make money on the side or whatever. And I am for quick and swift and quick justice on any of those kind of things. And I saw recently where former Speaker Glenn Cassida and Kate have moved their trial back a year. I wish we would move it up till like next week, because I think we have to literally make an example out of people in the public arena that believe that laws aren't meant for them. They are smarter than everybody else, and they can kind of do whatever they want to. And when people get caught doing wrong things, they should be punished very publicly, because they're public officials, very swiftly, and there should be no slaps on the wrist. And so I think, and I'll point our fingers on this. I think sometimes our election registry doesn't do that well, and I think they should be more harsher. And if they're going to be there and they're going to be involved, they should be immediate and make sure that when people do bad things and do wrong things, then they need to be punished for that.
Yeah, I mean, this is it is an abuse of power, with power being the key word. The Democrats had control of the legislature for more than 100 years. And in 1989, when I was just a youngster in politics, that was when the Operation Rocky Top scandal came out. And gosh, at this point, I don't even remember all the details of that. But I do remember 2 Democratic officials committed suicide because of that. And that rocked the state. Ted Ray Miller, who was a Democratic House leader, committed suicide in his garage in Knoxville. I was in Knoxville the day that happened. And, people said, oh my God, this isn't going to happen again. And then in the early 2000s, we saw Operation Tennessee Waltz, again with Democrats. They were in office. They'd become complacent, thought they could do anything. Several lawmakers went to federal prison, including John Ford from the Memphis Ford family. And, it's funny, Eric Shelzig from the Tennessee Journal, which is a fine publication, resuscitated a quote from Glenn Cassida, who had only been in office about 2 or 3 years at the time. And he made some comment about, I hope people will learn from this that you can't abuse your power like this. And damn if we don't have Glenn Cassida years down the road. And for those of us who are Glenn Cassida watchers, I live in the county that he represents, and I don't like him. And I don't like him because of I've watched him becoming more abusive with power over the last decade or so. But he goes out and commits the same kind of thing. And it's like a Greek tragedy. This whole Phoenix Solutions scandal that he was profiting from, how much money did he make off of that? Like maybe $20,000 or something. It wasn't even about the money. Clearly, it's about, let's see how we can screw people who took me out of the leadership. And he's going to pay the price of it, and already has paid the price of it. He's lost his job. He's lost friends, leadership. He spent 20 years working his way up from county commissioner to the 3rd highest role in government. And this is the result of it. And so I agree with Chip, like it doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. We see this on both sides, depending who is in power. And it's like, we got to crack down on it. The only way that it might get a little better is with swift punishment. And I don't know that really changes it, because the next guy or woman's going to come along and think, well, I'm smarter than the last people.
Yep. Yeah, I knew people on all 3 of those, and they all were the same way. Arrogance from day one, smarter than you, and I don't have to explain myself.
Yep.
Yeah, arrogance breeds stupidity in a lot of cases. What about, let's have some fun. And I thought about doing this as my opening question, and I thought, nah, we're just going to get into the meat and then we'll do this. So given that both of you have been in and around politics for years, sorry, my dog came over to visit. Why did you never run for anything? And if you could do anything else in your career outside of politics, what would it be and why?
Well, I'm going to go first because I did run for something twice.
Did you really? Okay,
I
learned something new.
Well, I ran for the State House of Representatives in Williamson County in 2016, and I ran against a fellow named Jeremy Durham. He had been credibly accused of sexually harassing or assaulting 26 women, and former Attorney General Herb Slattery had his office removed from the then Legislative Plaza because he said he was a danger to women. So I ran against him because, look, I'm a native of Franklin. My family settled here in the 1700s, and to see somebody like him represent my district was appalling. But I will say I decided to run not because of him, but because of Glenn Cassida. I heard Glenn Cassida on the radio one day saying that he wanted to have the National Guard round up all Syrian immigrants and deport them. And I called the Democratic House caucus that day and I said, who's running against this guy? Because I'm just moving back into my family house. This was in 2015. I'm moving back into my family home in Franklin. And if I'm in his district, I'm taking this guy on. And so I ended up running against Jeremy Durham, and I got my fanny beat. And then I ended up running for state Democratic Party chair in 2019, and also got my fanny beat then. And you asked if there was something I could do differently. I'll tell you, it is hard to run for office. And I had a couple of lobbyist friends laugh at me after I ran in 2016 and said something effective, you're a pro, why would you do this? And there were some severe ramifications on my career. I could barely get work for several years. I actually had somebody I had worked with as a client of mine for years say to me, we just can't work with you anymore because we don't want to upset Glenn. And so the aftermath was really, really personally difficult. But I don't think I would do anything differently, because when you have somebody who is representing your home county as poorly as I felt we were being represented, I feel like you've got an obligation to stand up and speak out and try your best. Chip?
Holly, I'm sorry you didn't win against Jeremy Durham for many reasons.
Yeah,
I
me
think it would
too.
have been fun. I think look, he was a bad guy too, that did bad things. So you could have got rid of him. And I think I would have had a lot of fun trying to beat you after that. So I'm sorry you didn't win. It would have been
Well,
an enjoyable task.
well, look, if I had one, we all know it would have been one term.
But anyway, and by the way, Holly, if she were elected to a Democrat, I would say this. I would try to beat her as much as possible, but I always like to say from 9 to 5, I like to say I try to work with Republicans, Democrats, and independents on anything that we can agree on, because somebody you have a disagreement with on Monday, you may have an agreement with on Tuesday. And at 5:15, I would have been happy to share a beer with her and talk about the 3 things that we agreed on, and give her a heads up. I'm going to try to beat her on the 17 things we disagree on. And that's
Chip, as long as you aren't anti-University of Tennessee football, we can always sit down and talk.
I'll let you know tomorrow. No, I'm all in on University of Tennessee football, but I had this long conversation with President Randy Boyd a couple weeks ago about, I said, I want to believe. I truly do. I truly want to believe.
We'll have this. We'll have this conversation offline, but I'm not confident about the Florida game tomorrow.
I'm not there. But Cherry, so I have run for political. I've run for political office. I was state party chairman. I was elected in Tennessee in 1999. I was actually 30-year-old state party chairman. And probably if you would ask me then, I would have said I would be often running for a congressional seat. In 2002, after I became party chairman, I took a pass on running for a congressional seat, the 7th, actually, the one that Marsha Blackburn had won. David Kustoff, my friend from Memphis, wanted to run. I didn't want to run against my friend. And so after I kind of took a pass on that, I moved to Washington and started to work for Senator Frist, and really enjoyed the behind the scenes building campaigns. I always jokingly said I spent 3 years building a presidential campaign for Senator Bill Frist to run for president. And I did such a good job, he decided not to run for president. But I really enjoyed the national environment, the national politics. And it didn't take me long after that to say I wouldn't probably put my name on the ballot ever, because I really love the behind the scenes. And Holly, and really probably I would say this to everybody on this call, because if you're taking the time, unless it's some of my lawyer friends from Memphis getting CLE credit only, and they've got us on mute. They've just got the ticker going. Everybody else on this call is what I like to say. You're in the change the world business. And whether you're a political consultant like me, or involved in a news publication like Holly, or being a Metro councilman like Sherry was and involved in the community, you are change the world business. And I can tell people all the time, I have helped people get elected president of the United States. That's changing the world. But I can also say at the council level, at the state rep level, the state senate, that is changing the world too. It's changing the world we live in. It's changing the community we live in. We're talking to the people that we do. And every time, and I had this conversation with some folks last week, I truly believe that most of us, like I said on education, when you look at the end product, everybody on this call and everybody involved in politics wants to have good jobs, a great education, good infrastructure. They want to have a future for their children. They want to build it a better place than when they left it. The fight is how we get there and what road we take. And so the big fight is in the middle. But I truly believe most people think at the end of the day, they agree on all the things we want. So the fight is how we get there. And that's why, so I do appreciate everybody that's on this call and involved, the people that help people like Sherry get elected to the Metro Council, the people that are involved in congressional campaigns. I always like to say that, usually if you take 100 people in a room, I always say, all right, now half of you raise your hand. And I said, by the way, you guys don't matter anymore because you don't vote. And then I take the 50 people left over and say, all right, now half of you raise your hands. And I was like, okay, you don't matter because you vote in the other primary. And then so basically I whittled the room down from 100 people to about 3 or 4 people that actually are engaged in their community and making a difference. So I know we're kind of not really short on time, but as we kind of finished up, that was my way of saying thanks for everybody on this call, because I think everybody on this call is in change the world business. And we might disagree on how to get there, but we all agree on the end game.
No, I think that's great, Chip. And I like the point you brought up that I don't think you can find anybody who says they don't care about safe communities. They want their children to be safe, well educated. Everybody wants good jobs. But we just have vastly different ways of getting to that end.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we'll ever be able to breach that delta between the two sides. But there is the commonality that I think most of us want the same thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the middle gives me my job and gives you your job because you got to cover it.
Well, and to your point, I think it's important that the dialogue that we're having right now is more widespread. And that's one of the problems that we've got, is that people don't know how to talk to each other. They talk at each other, and they don't necessarily engage in policy focus. It's in many cases turned into personal attacks. And instead of focusing on the issues, it's politics before policy. And that's really not going to get us anywhere. And I love being able to be involved in something like this so that we can show people that you can really get along and disagree.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not beyond blaming my party for a big part of that. And I always go back to 94 with Newt Gingrich. I love Newt and friends with him, but somewhere along in the 90s, that new group of young Democrat or Republican congressmen, now this was after 40 years of Democrat control, decided the Democrats needed to be the enemy. And they made them the enemy, and they were successful making them the enemy in 94. Of course, that was when Bill Clinton was in his midterm. They had a huge win at the ballot box. And so that when we started that, it was like, okay, so I can't be your friend anymore. And then back then, Democrats and Republicans still talked. They still worked together. There was a lot of bipartisan issues. They got together and had meals. They families socialized together. They actually did try to work together. I think it's now to the point where it's hard to find Democrats in Washington, Democrats and Republicans in Washington that they can say are really friends, and that they've taken the time out from somebody they didn't know before they got elected and say, you know what, I may be a Republican, you may be a Democrat. I'm going to get to know you, and I'm going to figure out, maybe it's 20%, maybe it's 10%. I'm going to figure out the 10 or 20% of the things we can agree on and work on together. And let's start there and see if we can't move that up a little bit. So it's a big challenge.
And I would say by the same token, Tennessee Democrats got into the super minority for a couple of reasons. One is there was a sea change in national politics, some of that started with Newt Gingrich and some before that. But also the Tennessee Democratic Party as a whole, as a body, became very complacent. And Democratic legislators became very complacent because the Democrats had a supermajority since right after Reconstruction. And, folks thought, well, things are never going to change. We're always going to be here. And as a case in point, in 2008, the then Democratic State Party chair had staff members and volunteers making calls into North Carolina to support Barack Obama, who, hey, I like Barack Obama, right? But that was also the year the Democrats lost the majority in the state house. So while the Tennessee Democratic Party was helping in North Carolina, they were not tending to business at home. And so you got to call that out. Like, yes, Republicans have been smarter than Democrats in Tennessee in a lot of ways. Yes, they played on national issues, but also Democrats didn't do anything to help themselves.
So how do we move forward and get people to start talking to each other and reduce the rancor?
Man, I honestly don't know. Like, we are so polarized now. Every time I hear some poll talking about independent voters, I just don't believe they're independent voters anymore. I think these people are fudging their answers to polls. I think people have a pretty good idea of how they're going to vote, Republican, Democrat. There are some issues that are so polarizing, abortion, pro-choice, pro-life. That's one of them. If you're a Democrat, people are going to assume you're for, quote, killing babies. And if you're a Republican, I think folks are going to assume that you are a fascist. That's the word we hear these days.
Somebody just put this up there. I just read it. They said this is stuff like this is the answer to your question, Sherry. And I do agree with that, because I'm come from a city that I'm not sure this may be the first election that I'm going to actually vote for a congressman that has any chance of winning in Davidson County. I'm not sure. I'm like 0 for 127 on my selections in Metro Council races. Obviously, I adjust a little bit. What I'm saying is, I am not, even though I'm from Nashville, I'm in the vast minority of my community that is a conservative Republican and wants to be active in my community. And I'll be honest with you guys, and I don't know who all, I haven't looked at the list on the call. It's sometimes hard for me to be active in the Nashville community because I am an active conservative Republican. Now, think about that for a minute. It's hard for a guy that was born and raised in Nashville, that has a successful business, besides politics, by the way. And sometimes when I want to get actively involved in groups, send me a check. That'd be great. But, I don't think you'll be a really good fit for the board, things like that. And so I think groups like what you're doing, Sherry, and what we're doing here today, Holly and I, my guess is 10 years ago, we weren't friends. We didn't know each other, but I think we did one of these, and I think Holly probably goes, man, I really don't like Chip, but he's not horrible. And so that was a place to start, not horrible. And then as we talked over the years, don't get me wrong. I don't know that our families are going to start vacationing together anytime soon, but we're friendly. We respect each other. I respect what she does. I hope she respects what I do. And so the more conversation, my mentor and friend, Mike Huckabee, used to say, we need a lot more conversation and less confrontation. And Sherry, I think that was your point in the beginning. And so, I would consider opportunities like this to answer your question, more things like this, where it's not, we're not looking for affirmation. We are still looking for information.
Chip, you don't want to go on vacation with me because I'm boring. I'm 58. I don't drink and I go to bed early.
Well, I'm a little bit behind you. I'm 54. But now the difference is I've got a 2-year-old and I've got
Well, I definitely don't want to go on vacation with you, Pet.
No.
A baby on the way in January. So we're very excited about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That just makes me really
late start.
tired, Chip. I'm 66 and I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old grandchildren, 2 boys. And just listening to you gets me tired.
Well, Abigail keeps me moving and I love every minute of it. I waited a long time for her, so I'm pretty excited.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything else you want to add to let everybody know? We've got about a minute left.
I'll let Holly put the finishing touches on it.
No, I mean, I actually love doing things like this, and I don't remember how Chip and I met, and we don't agree on a lot of things, but I do respect him. And, it's that old saying about hate the game, don't hate the player. I mean, Chip does his job the way the political system is. And when I was in politics, I played the game the way the system was. And if you don't like the system, once again, I'm going to say you need to get yourself involved. And it's great that you're sitting on this call, but I am all for people running for office, Democrat, Republican. If you don't like what you see, get out there and do it. It's fun. It's fun. The good and the bad.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. I'll finish. I know I'll take half of her third minute. Get in the game. Get in the game. Republican, Democrat, Independent, you hate them all, you love them all, whatever. Get in the game. And if you can't go to a meeting, knock on your neighbor's door, knock on your street and say, hey, are you registered to vote? Can I help you get registered to vote? Here's my candidate of choice. Would you vote for them? I mean, every little bit matters. And I've always said, even when I was party chairman back in 2000, you have to get in the game to be part of the conversation. And I don't care if you agree with me or disagree with me or whatever. What I do want you to do is get in the game, because I think the more people that are involved, the better we do.
You have to be a good communicator and you have to have thick skin when you're in the game. But at the end of the day, if you've made a difference for one person, having sat in that chair, it's so rewarding. And to be able to get in and help people with their issues, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, potholes, trash, healthcare, all of it matters.
Yes,
And it
ma'am.
matters a lot.
And
So
Sherry,
thank you so much.
Thank you. You've done a great job.
Really
Thanks.
good job.
Thanks. Very cool. Well, have a great rest of the day. Everybody enjoy their weekend, and thank you for being here.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.